PSAC warns federal budget could lead to 70,000 job cuts in the public service. Imagine waking up and finding out 70,000 people might lose their jobs. That's not a dystopian movie plot. That's potentially your government's next budget move. What's up, Canada Bulletin crew? Today we're unpacking the public service showdown that has unions screaming disaster and the finance minister saying sustainable. Spoiler alert, someone's going to be really unhappy. Here's a number that'll make you spit out your Tim Hortons. Canada's federal public service grew by almost 70,000 employees since 2019. That's like hiring the entire population of Peterborough, Ontario, to work for the government. Now Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne wants to hit the undo button and trim things back to pre-pandemic levels. The Public Service Alliance of Canada, they're calling it a recipe for disaster. Let's break down this epic budget battle. So here's what went down. Earlier this week, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne, who clearly woke up and chose chaos, suggested that Canada's public service has gotten a little chunky. His solution? Time for a diet. We need to bring back the civil service to a sustainable level, Champagne said Wednesday, with the energy of someone who definitely doesn't have to worry about job security. He continued, "If you look at how many people we have today and what we had before COVID-19, we need to get back to something more sustainable." Now, sustainable is government code for we're spending too much money and something's got to give. And that's something, well, according to the union math, it could be 70,000 jobs. That's not a rounding error. That's a city of people potentially losing their livelihoods. But let's pump the brakes for a second and look at the actual numbers, because context is everything when you're talking about potentially devastating thousands of families. Speaking of numbers, and trust me, these are wild. Let's dive into what's actually happened to Canada's public service since the pandemic turned everything upside down. According to Treasury Board data, there are currently 357,965 total employees across all federal departments and agencies in 2025. Back in 2019, before we knew what social distancing meant, that number was 287,983. Do the math with me here. That's 69,982 more people. Basically 70,000 new government jobs in just 6 years. That's like adding a whole new department or 5. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The federal public service actually shrank by nearly 10,000 jobs in 2025 compared to 2024. So, technically, the trimming has already started. We're just debating how much more cutting needs to happen. But wait, before you start thinking, yeah, that seems like a lot of government workers, consider this. Canada's population grew by an estimated 4.3 million people since 2019, according to Statistics Canada. Let me repeat that. 4.3 million more Canadians. More people needing passports processed, more tax returns to handle, more healthcare services to coordinate, more everything that requires, government workers to actually do the work. So, is 70,000 more public servants excessive when you're serving 4.3 million more people? Or is it just scaling up to meet demand? That's the billion-dollar question, literally, because these salaries add up fast. But the union representing these workers, they have some opinions. And by opinions, I mean they're sounding the alarm like a fire drill at 3 a.m. The Public Service Alliance of Canada, PSAC for those who like acronyms, took to social media faster than your aunt shares questionable Facebook memes. Their message? The upcoming federal budget is a recipe for disaster. PSAC National President Sharon D'Souza did not hold back. Champagne's comments on returning to pre-COVID staff numbers mean that 70,000 public service workers could lose their jobs, leaving a hollowed-out public service to run vital services that keep our country safe. She continued with the rhetorical heat. Our world has changed since COVID-19, and public services are stretched thin. Gutting the services that families, veterans, and the elderly rely on now is reckless. Now, hollowed out and reckless are strong words. But SAC's making a point that's hard to ignore. The world isn't the same as 2019. We've got more people, more complex challenges, more services being demanded by Canadians who, rightfully, expect their government to actually function. Think about it. Have you tried getting a passport recently? or calling Service Canada, or dealing with literally any government service. The wait times are already legendary. Now imagine cutting 70,000 positions. You might be on hold until 2030. But here's where this story gets really spicy. Because this budget drama is happening under Prime Minister Mark Carney, who's already warned Canadians about sacrifices. And apparently, those sacrifices might include a whole lot of pink slips. The budget drops on November 4th. Mark your calendars, folks, because it's going to be dramatic. In a recent speech to students at the University of Ottawa, Carney previewed what's coming, and let's just say he's setting expectations real low. He promised the budget will include generational investments, which sounds inspiring until you remember the second part, some sacrifices. And in government speak, sacrifices rarely means politicians taking pay cuts. It usually means everyone else tightening their belts. Now here's the really interesting plot twist. During the 2025 election campaign, when politicians make promises they may or may not keep, the Liberal Party said they were committed to capping, not cutting public service employment. Capping, not cutting. Those are the exact words. So if 70,000 jobs get axed, that's not a cap. That's a chainsaw. That's going from "we'll maintain current levels" to "remember 2019? Let's go back there, faster than you could say broken campaign promise. So what's really going on here? Is this about fiscal responsibility, or is there something bigger at play? Let's connect the dots. Here's the reality. Canada's facing some serious fiscal pressure right now. We've got a looming deficit that could hit $70 billion, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer. We've got a trade war with the U.S. that's making everyone nervous. We got an economy that's not exactly firing on all cylinders. So when Champagne talks about sustainable, he's really saying we can't afford to keep this up. The government's looking at its balance sheet like someone checking their bank account after a wild weekend, going, okay, where can we cut costs? The problem? Public servants aren't just line items on a spreadsheet. They're people with mortgages, families,